Hello, my name is Steffen. I work for the RSPB. I'm a scientist, and my job is to figure out why globally threatened species are declining and to develop solutions how we can save them. One of the main threats to albatrosses are invasive species that live on the islands where albatrosses breed. And I just want to explain a little bit how it comes to this and why invasive species are such a big problem to albatrosses. Albatrosses live mostly in the Southern Ocean and on very, very remote islands, where it's very difficult for mammals to get to. So for hundreds of thousands of years, albatrosses bred on islands where they were basically alone and there weren't any other animals that tried to eat them or affect them in any way. So they kind of forgot how to defend themselves. Until a few hundred years ago, people managed to get to those islands by building boats, and they traveled to those islands and brought other animals that would have never gotten to those islands by themselves. So the people who were exploring the world's oceans, they took animals like pigs and goats and sheep, so they would have something to eat if they landed on a new island. And then they released those new animals onto an island that wasn't prepared to have such animals on the island. And what these animals do is they have to adjust to their new environment, and they start eating all sorts of things that are there. And some animals then figure out that they can eat birds that are completely unaware of being eaten by things that have four legs because they have never seen them before. So if you imagine that a small rat that hitched a ride on some ancient sailboat arrives on an island, these rats will climb ashore and they will start eating everything that they can find. And at some point, after a very harsh winter, the rat is very hungry. There's not much food. There are no plants anymore. There are no invertebrates anymore. And so these rats get very desperate and very hungry. And they come across an albatross chick that is 5 times its size. And initially, the rat would not approach it because it's a big thing that is very scary. But there comes a point when the rat is so hungry and desperate that they basically starve to death. So they have no choice. They can either die of starvation or they can risk being killed by the thing that they want to eat. So they take a step and approach the big albatross chick and see whether they can actually eat it. And so the rat goes and tries to nibble the albatross chick, and the albatross chick doesn't know what's going on because they've never been nibbled by anything else before and they don't know how to defend themselves. So it's a very short contest, and the rat kills the albatross chick. And not only is that a very easy process for the rat, it's also hugely rewarding because the albatross chick is a massive ball of fat. And so the rat then becomes very healthy and very well nourished. And so it goes on to survive the winter, and it will have lots of offspring because it ate so much fatty seabird chick. So that rat will then have lots and lots of offspring, and they will also start eating seabirds. So after a few generations, you suddenly have a huge population of rats that all know that seabirds are very easy and very nutritious prey. And because the albatrosses can't defend themselves, we have the problem that routinely on islands where you have albatrosses and these invasive species, very, very few chicks actually fledge and leave the island to then roam the seas and return to breed themselves. And on some islands, this is very quick because the animals that people have brought and introduced, like pigs or cats or rats, they already know how to kill other animals. And on some islands, this takes a little bit longer. If, for example, the animal that we introduced is a small mouse, like we have on Gough and Marion Islands, then it takes a very long time for the mice to actually start eating albatrosses, because they will eat lots of invertebrates and plants and roots and everything else until they become so desperate, they've exhausted all the other food sources on the island, and the mice become so desperate that they have no other choice than to tackle a big albatross chick, which for a mouse is a very daunting prospect, because you're approaching something that is 10 times your size. And that's why this has happened only recently, in the last 20 years or so, that we started seeing the impacts of mice on albatross chicks, especially on Gough and on Marion Island. And now we are in a position that for Gough Island, roughly half or 2/3 of the albatross chicks that hatch are eaten by mice every single year. So the albatrosses on Gough, they raise only 1 or 2 chicks every 10 years, and all the other years they lose their chick due to mice. And in the long run, this is not a very sustainable practice, so the populations will gradually start declining, because there simply aren't enough young birds that will return. So that is a big problem. But in the last year or two, we actually started seeing a much bigger problem, namely that the mice, encouraged by eating the albatross chicks and not encountering any problems, have now become bold enough to attack the adults as well. So they don't just wait until late winter when the chicks sit there. They now start crawling over the backs of adult albatrosses and start eating the adult albatrosses while they're incubating the eggs. And that is very scary, because if mice start eating the adult albatrosses, then the populations will decline much faster. So there is an urgent need for us to remove those invasive species from islands to prevent the albatrosses from going extinct. And people always ask me, well, it's not hard. We have cats, they eat mice. Why don't you just take cats to the island and they will get rid of the problem? And the sad thing is that many people have tried this on many islands, and it has always failed spectacularly, because you cannot teach a cat to only eat mice. Yes, they will eat mice, but catching a mouse is actually quite exhausting for a cat. So they have to chase the mouse and kill it. And it's much nicer and easier for the cat to just kill a big fat albatross chick that is not running away than trying to run after a tiny mouse that does run away. So when you introduce cats on an island where there is already mice or rats, then the cats will just eat the birds, and you then have cats and rats or mice, which is even worse than just having the mice or the rats there in the first place. So the only way we can get rid of the mice on Gough Island is by killing all of them with poison that we will drop from the helicopter. And that is a very daunting operation, but it has worked very successfully on many islands around the world. There are hundreds of islands where this approach has worked already, and we're very confident that we can do this. It's just a very complicated and expensive operation, and we would very much appreciate your support to help us remove the mice from Gough Island and restore the island as a perfect place where albatrosses can nest safely and raise their chicks.